Chavre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy, physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Seitzei. We're in the middle of Chodesh Elul, and the countdown to Rosh Hashanah is beginning in earnest. So, as usual, since the war started, we added to tzedakah. So we're giving tzedakah now. Gedelut tzedakah shemakarev sagula. Mashiach now. The war should end, and Mashiach should come now. Then we go to tefillah. We'll say a pasuk, and the pasuk is V'ahavtas Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meidecha. You should love the Eibishter with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Everyone knows the famous statement of the Zohar: Les pulchener. There's no avodas Hashem like the avodah of Ava, the one that comes out of love. And this is actually the central theme of the month that we're in now, which is the month of Elul, and everyone knows the Rosh Hashanah, the most famous Rosh Hashanah of Elul, Ani l'doidi v'doidi li. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me, which is the pasuk in Shir HaShirim, which is the whole central theme of this month, which is really the central theme of Yiddishkeit. But just to read you in the words of the Rebbe, we once mentioned this, Parshas Re'ei, Tov Nun. The Rebbe wrote these words, that Anilu Doidi V'Doidi Li, which is the central theme of the whole service of man to Hashem, as sein Metzies, soll sein verbunden und vereinzigt mit dem Eibishten, that your being should be united with Hashem, und wie is doidi, how Hashem is your beloved. Miloshen Yedidus, ve'ava, anonter und tiefer Verbund von Liebschaft. A close, intimate, deep connection and bond of love. Und der Verbund is of zwei Fanim, and the bond is in two ways. Anilu doidi, the Yisraelis von Aiden, the arousal of the Yid, was a Seitzei, he's drawn to, and binzich, mit an Ave to the Meibishtin. He binds himself with a strong attachment out of love to Hashem. Durch dienen mit Torah mitzvahs, through serving Hashem with Torah mitzvahs, und v'doidi li, the amshacham mitech Ave, from the Meibishtin to Yidden. The connection, and how Hashem is drawn to us, also reciprocal through love. So, there's a connection in this week's Parsha, the most amazing connection. And this week's Parsha is the mitzvah of Kiddushin, the mitzvah of getting married. But then, in connection to that, there's another pasuk which uses the same words of Ki yikach ish isha, which from those words we learn the mitzvah of Kiddushin, which was mentioned in the Parsha before, a couple of psukim, but then it speaks about the exemption from military duty. And the pasuk says, and this is Kapitel Chav Daled, pasuk Hey, Ki yikach ish isha chadosha, when a man marries a new life, lo Seitzei batzava, he shall not go out to the army, v'lo yaver olav l'chol dover, nor shall it obligate him for any matter. Noki yeh lebeisei shana, he shall be free for his house for 1 year. V'simach es ishto yashalokoch, he shall gladden his wife whom he has married. So over here, we can ask an obvious question. You come first? There's a country, and there's wars, and there's an army. And we're saying that for 1 year, you should gladden your wife. So, on one level you could say, because, we want people that are serving in the army should be happy and certain basic needs should be taken care of. So, since it's his first year, and he's experiencing what it means to be married and to be happy and content on a certain level which he never had before, so therefore, we first let him have that experience, and then he can go out to war. Okay, very nice. But the truth is that you could ask a question, but doesn't the country come first? Doesn't service become first? in a certain sense. Wouldn't you think so? So that could be a question someone could ask. And the answer is, you're right. And whoever looks at the marriage in such a way that it's about you feeling good, missed the whole point. Of course, you're supposed to be happy. And you will be happy. But the question is, how do you become happy? And the answer is, the reason why v'simach Seitzei, and you do this, because that's what the Ratzon Hashem is. That's what the Eibishter wanted. And because that's what the Eibishter wants, therefore you're happy, because you know that this is what Hashem wants from you. Your life is a life of service. When the order of the day is to serve in the army, yes sir, you serve in the army. When the order of the day is v'simach Seitzei, make your wife happy, then you make your wife happy. And thereby you will also be happy. In other words, the real idea of happiness, and this we're going to speak about today about marriage, the whole idea of the concept of the Jewish marriage is that the husband and the wife together transcend their own limitations and their own limited biases or interests or ego, and they connect to something which is greater than both of them, and therefore they come to the true happiness, the ultimate happiness. Everyone knows, today we're going to call our share happy wife, happy life. But what's that happy wife, happy life is because you are going to reach transcendence, and that's how you're going to be happy. So let's first talk about the general idea, and then we'll go into the pasuk over here, certain things. So first of all, when we speak about the idea of marriage and the Jewish concept, and especially according to Chassidus, so there's two main points, and then there's a third point. The two main points, which we see from many letters of the Rebbe to couples, but also from anybody who's ever studied Torah, we see that the point is that the whole idea of the marriage, the unification between the husband and the wife, is mirroring and reflecting the relationship between Hashem and the Yidden. And as a matter of fact, on this pasuk itself, there's an unbelievable Rabbeinu Bechaya, and the Balaturim also brings it down, on these words where it says that the husband should be Noki Lebeisei Shana. He should be free from all obligations for his house for a year. The Rabbeinu Bechaya brings down the following, that Noki Yil Lebeisei Shana is Sofatevis Yud Kei Vav Kei. I'm going to read it inside. Kan Nirmas Hashem HaMiyuchid. This is the Rabbeinu Bechaya. Over here in this pasuk is an allusion to Hashem HaMiyuchid, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei, the highest name of Hashem. And he says like this: V'chein motzinu ba'Kadosh Baruch Hu shoya b'Sinai im Yisrael, that Hashem remained with the Yidden at Sinai. Dugmas chosam v'kala, like a husband, the chosan and a kala, a bride with the bridegroom. She'omda shchina b'har shana achas. Hashem stayed there at Sinai for a year. Almost an entire year. But they were there from Vav Sivan till Chaf Ir the next year. So it's 12 months. It covered 12 months. So look at this Rabbeinu Bechaya. He's telling us that the reason when we are v'simach Seitzei for the year after we get married, make her happy, and therefore we can't be in military service, what is it about? Open up a commentary, a Rishon, that Rabbeinu Bechaya, what does he say? Because this is what Hashem did. So in other words, when we talk about the unification, when you're living with your wife, you're supposed to be mirroring this Damei Salabayre to do what Hashem did. Just like Hashem stayed with Klal Yisrael by Sinai for a year, you stay with your wife for a year. You're doing Hashem's work, what Hashem did. Okay, that's the Rabbeinu Bechai. So one level of marriage is the whole idea of what Shlomo Melech wrote a sefer called Shir Hashirim, and the whole sefer is about comparing the bond and the connection of Hashem and Klal Yisrael as two people that love each other. And therefore we have Tanya, chapter 46, a minute to Colossians, which I read from you from inside, which I think we read already once before. I'm just going to read it again a bit quickly, some words. Perek Memvav, and the Alter Rebbe says, and this is what it means when we say that we bless the Eibishter, who sanctified us with his mitzvahs, ka'odam ha'mekadesh isha, like a man that marries a woman. And he says, Liyos miyuchodis imay biyichud gomor, to be one with her, kameshakosov, as it says, v'davak be'ishtoi v'hoyel l'basar echad, that we become one. He clings to his wife and they become one flesh. And then he says, v'yes and al-kein lein ketz, hu yichad nefesh oli kis hoy sekes b'teiro mitzvahs, v'nefesh achiyunis ul-v'shein and skorim leil be'erein say baruch hu. It's much more than that, because it's not a unification of two limited mortals, which everything that a limited mortal does is limited, so therefore connection ultimately is also limited. But when we're talking about Hashem, we're talking about that it's the union of the godly soul with the infinite light, when it does Torah mitzvahs. So we're talking about an infinite connection. And then the Alter Rebbe says, and this is the point, Ulachein, and therefore, this is the reason, Him shall shleimol v'shalom b'shir hashirim, yichud zel, yichud chasam v'kala. Therefore, Shlomo Melech wrote his entire Song of Songs, comparing the union of two people that love each other, comparing it, as we should understand about our connection to Hashem, between the groom and the bride, with words that are about attachment and strong desire and will, with hugging and kissing. So we should understand that when it comes to our relationship with Hashem, we have to start from this world, our world. So just like you could think of the greatest love that could be between two people, let's say bride and groom, and a marriage, and so too we have to think about our relationship with Hashem, that it's in the same way. And then the Alter Rebbe goes on to say that the real profundity is as we spoke many times, the whole idea of Judaism that Hashem chose us is that we become Mrs. Hashem, something which is limited and finite, with limitations, amadu mugbul, and that itself becomes one, not with how Hashem loathes himself, not how Hashem becomes diplomatic, not how Hashem contracts himself, not how Hashem becomes diluted and diminished, but as Hashem is in his very essence. And that's what the Alter Rebbe explains over here, Kidishonu, he took us into his inner chambers. In the very essence of Hashem that is unlimited and has no definition, that's what we become united with through our performance of Torah mitzvahs. And we also mentioned this piece of Chassidus in Derech Mitzvah Mitzvahs Avos Yisrael that brings out why this is the whole important thing, because it starts with the love. It starts with the essential Ava Atzmis. Ani l'doidi, and v'doidi li. It starts with the love and the essential love that I have to Hashem, the Yidden have to Hashem, and that Hashem has to us. That's the engine, that's the drive, that's the oil, that's the glue, that's the very DNA, that's everything. And from there, everything else flows. And therefore, there's the Maimer Azal that says, we spoke about this for sure before, Kol asvarim kodesh, aber sefer zeh shir hashirim is kotche kotchem. Because that's what the whole foundation is all about. That's when we get to the core of the issue. And in Derech Mitzvah that Tzemach Tzedek talks about Avos Yisrael, and it says that Avos Yisrael is the main mitzvah, and all the rest is Vidich Pirushahu. And he says the following analogy. This is in Derech Mitzvah page 58. The Tzemach Tzedek says that Shar Kol HaMitzvahs Hem Pirush LaHasbara Yichud. All the rest of the Torah, all the other mitzvahs, are commentary, meaning to say, they're expansions of how, let's say we say two people love each other. So there's the signs that they love each other. You know, couples that shop together, stay together. Couples that pray together, stay together. Couples that learn together, stay together. So all the mitzvahs, Evarim de Malka, are 613 ways, and specifically the mitzvahs say how the love is expressed. But it's all starts with the love. And the Tzemach Tzedek writes as following. The rest of the mitzvahs, because he says, Avos Yisrael means when you love another Jew, you love the Hashem, the spark of God, which is in that person. And then he says, what's the whole Torah mitzvahs? How are we going to show that we're connected? Im chachmasei b'chachmasei b'talmud Torah, whether it's a meeting of the minds, when we study Torah, v'ava b'ava, whether we are in sync emotionally, v'sharei midasai v'sharei mitzvahs. And he gives an analogy, like two people that are very close and intimate. Sibas kashrus. Why are they connected? The cause. That's because they love each other. But this love expresses itself and manifests itself in different ways. Sometimes in speech. You love your spouse and you love speaking to her, let's say. Or over here he says, you have somebody you love to discuss ideas with. Sometimes you're just so happy, like it says about Avos Reim, you're samer b'simchasei. Sometimes you do a favor, you give the guy a loan, you give the guy a lift. And then he says, etc., etc., see there. So this is the word that kol ha-svarim kodesh aber shir hashirim is kotche kotchem, because that gets to the root of it all. The root of it all is the Ava, which is the sefer of shir hashirim, which discusses the Ava itself, and the rest is all talking about different ways how it manifests itself. There's couples that go cycling together, couples that go rowing together, couples that go walking together, hiking together, whatever it is. So the same thing is with Eibush and Knesset Yisrael. We're doing all these mitzvahs. There's different ways how we show the bond and the intimate connection. So now we're speaking about marriage on the level where it's all a mirror. It's all a reflection of Kudshe B'richu and Knesset Yisrael, Zohar and Malchus. So that's one thing. So one level of the Jewish idea of marriage is that we're living a life, it's a higher sort of life, because we realize that what's going on between us is not only about two small individuals and their own happiness, but with something connected to something which is much greater, much larger, and much more of cosmic significance. And obviously, when you're involved in something greater and higher, that brings you greater happiness. And we see that it works. And it brings spirituality. You understand? Things are not coarse. It brings a certain spirituality. That's one idea. The second idea, and this is why I believe, and I think I mentioned this before, the Rebbe's answer to every single couple. Sometimes, by the way, you see letters where the Rebbe says you should realize that when you're getting married, it's the mirror to the unification of Kudshe B'richu and Shchintei of Hashem and Klal Yisrael. So it's a whole different attitude, a whole different approach. It's a whole different lens looking at the spirituality of marriage. Then there's another idea. Every single letter of congratulations and blessings for the wedding was that binyan adiyad, it should be an eternal home, al pi yesodei ha-Torah v'ha-mitzvah, based on the principles of Torah mitzvahs. So over here also, one of the ways to have happiness in life and a good marriage, and which brings you happiness, and this goes back to the question of a simach hasishtoi, means it's not about you and it's not about her. It's about the cause. And that's why, and going back to the secular idea, one of the major issues and problems, you could say, about society is it's very hard for a person to be vulnerable. It's very, very hard for a person to surrender. And the way the human being was created was that there's a certain selfishness. That's your nefesh habahamis and your ego. And then you have the question, what's in it for me? And then you have the question, how much should I give in order to get? And then you have the question, it could be you're never going to be able to graduate from that. Because if that's the basis, you're always going to be asking yourself the question, am I getting the better of the deal? Am I giving more than I'm getting? I don't know if it's worth it. And then it's a problem. And you have two people that are married, and they might be making those sort of reckoning every single night. Am I getting the better of the deal? Am I giving more than I'm getting? So then it's not worth it. And once you start with such a reckoning, it could be you'll never be able to get out of it. And therefore, you can end up with a divorce. Chas v'sholem, I'm saying. But if you do it the Torah way, the Jewish way, the Hasidic way, especially so then you're both surrendered to a higher cause. You don't wear the pants, she doesn't wear the pants, Hashem wears the pants. So therefore, there's no threat. Who's giving more, who's getting more. You both enlisted. You have shared values, and the shared values lifted you up higher to something which is greater than both of you, and you both willingly are connected to this thing which is greater and higher than both of you, and in relation to that thing which is greater and higher than both of you, you're both equal. So, it's not a problem. And that brings happiness. Because when you read today all the articles about happiness, what the irony is, of course, there's aspects of the happiness where they say sleep well, rest, have a good diet, do exercise, don't forget about me time. But those are all details. And if it was all about that, then I think you'd have a lot more people that are happy. And we see that in today's generation, there's less happiness than ever. I don't want to get into that whole discussion now. But the irony is that if they just focus more, and most articles these days speak about gratitude, they speak about voluntarism, and they speak about dedicating yourself to something which is greater than yourself, or challenging yourself. In other words, there is an aspect of the soul, the spark of God, which strives for higher, for aspiration, for breaking out of your limitations. And to do those things, the Jewish, the Hasidic, the Torah recipe, marriage is the ultimate thing. Because you're giving of yourself, you're connecting with somebody else, that both of you together are nullified or transcend and to something and become part of something which is greater than each of you as individuals, and that brings true unity. And therefore, in the end, it brings the happiness. So, one aspect of marriage we spoke about, the idea that it mirrors Kutsha B'dicha Shchinte. The second idea of marriage is that it's Alpi Yisodei HaTorah VaMitzvah, Rotzon Hashem. Since there's a Rotzon Hashem, a shared value which transcends both of your limitations, it's not a problem. Then there's another aspect, which Chassidus talks about. There's the Koyach HaLeida. By the way, when we come to a chasna and there's a chuppah, there's these laws about how carefully you have to be standing by a chuppah. And the word is because there's a hamshacha, there's a great drawing down of the infinite light of Hashem every single time a couple marries. By Varachesam Elikim, Zocher and Nekeva, a special infusion of the infinite light of Hashem comes into a couple, which causes the unification of opposites, male and female, as we explained until now. But in addition to that, the power to create a child. I don't want to get into it now. But that special power to create a child is a special Amshacha Ve'en Sof. And that's a third aspect, which comes out especially in parenting, and it brings even a greater unity in the parents, when they're able to together create a child, they become a partner with Hashem, and then raise that child with the proper values, etc. So that's a third dimension. Now I want to go back to the pasuk over here, where it says, "V'simach es ishtei." just to emphasize again this point that we're talking about, that this whole message over here is not that you're free and exempt from the army because of selfish reasons, so you should feel good. It's actually the opposite way around. As Rashi says straight away, that Vesimach means Yisamach es Ishtoi. He should gladden his wife. And then he explains that it clearly does not mean that the translation Toyu, it's a mistake that means with his wife, because if you say it's with his wife, then there's an emphasis that you should be happy and it's for your sake. But Rashi clearly is negating that, and he's saying the meaning is V'simach es Ishtoi, that he's gladdening his wife, that it's a mission. That's your job right now. And the same thing is, the Balaturim over here brings that V'simach, if I remember correctly, is 354, and he says it means that the husband has to be ready to be with his wife. Marital relations, 354 days a year, every single day of the year, except for Yom Kippur. So again, it's about a duty, it's about an obligation. Of course it's coming out of love. But you have to realize that this is a shlichus. This is your job now. This is what the Ratzon Hashem is. And therefore you have to do it. And it also brings out that the only way for you to be happy is if she's happy. As we said in the beginning, happy wife, happy life. Your job is to make her happy. And if you make her happy, that will also make you happy. So again, the whole emphasis and the whole foundation over here, the first year of the marriage, is make her happy. I just want to say one story. You know, there's so much to say. First of all, this is what we have to remember again and again. The famous story, I forgot the details, about a man, the Futafas, who was in jail, and everybody was bemoaning. I'm going to paraphrase. They were all bemoaning, and they were all very upset and depressed. They're sitting over there and saying, you know, when I was a free man, I was an officer in charge of this department, and I was a boss, and I was a leader, and it was amazing. Now who am I? I'm just a regular prisoner. I have no freedom. I'm in, Gulag, Siberia. And one after the other is bemoaning the situation of how terrible it is, and they're complaining about it, and they're depressed. And they all turn to the Mendel, and they see him, he's always happy. He's always besimcha. And they ask him, how could you be besimcha, even in this slave labor camp, Siberia? And the answer is simple. Because by you, all of you people, things change drastically from one extreme to another. You're a big boss, and now you're a slave, you're in slave labor, and you have no freedom. But for me, there's no difference from when I was not in the slave labor camp to when I'm in the slave labor camp. I'm serving Hashem. Just like I served Hashem when I had a pair of tefillin, when I was able to put on tefillin, and I was able to go to the mikveh every day, and I was able to do mitzvahs freely. So that means that the Eibishter put me in those circumstances then to be able to serve him in that way. But now that he put me in these circumstances and in this situation and these conditions, I serve the Eibishter another way. And the fact that I'm in this situation and in these circumstances, because that is the will of Hashem right now. So that's the key to the whole point over here. You're serving in the army as a deep sea diver, as a demolition expert, as a sniper, as a whatever. That's one way you're serving Hashem. Then there's another way you're serving Hashem. And how is that? V'simach es Ishtoi. That's your service of Hashem for this year. So therefore, it's all about the service of Hashem. And being in service, v'simach, that you have to make the other person happy. And that's how we come to true happiness. You know, I knew a doctor once, an orthopedic surgeon, and, I was once talking to him. I don't know how it came up, and he divorced his wife. He married his secretary. Anyway, so I asked him, why did you divorce your wife? So he says, you know what? For the past 25 years, I did everything for my wife and my kids. And now I decided to do something for me. So I'm not judging anybody. We don't judge anybody. And this week's parsha also speaks about divorce. And we never judge another person. And we ask Hashem to bring shalom, peace, to every single couple. And by every single couple should be ava va'ach v'shalom v'reis. But we're talking about the concept, we're talking about the approach. The fact that he's able to say, till now I did everything for them and now I want to do something for me, that's not the word. That's not the way a Jew speaks. Now, if you're miserable, then it's terrible. And we have to speak about it, and we have to try to do everything within our powers to make things well. But it's not about trading in your old vehicle to get a new one, upgrading the model, so to speak. That's not what it's about. It's about something greater than you. It's something about a cause. It's something about a mission. It's something about a purpose. It's something about values. And if you graduate and grow up to stop thinking like a teenager, then you'll realize the true joy that comes with such a mindset, the maturity and the real joy. Maybe should help that we should bring out from us ruach, aise ruach, our avas Hashem, filled with the feeling of ani l'doidi. Say ani l'doidi, say Hashem, I love you. And through us saying ani l'doidi, we should see the response of v'doidi li. And the Eibusha should be mekayim v'simachas ishtoi. As the Rabbeinu Bechai said that this is what the Eibusha did at Sinai for a year. So we should see v'simachas ishtoi, the gilui of the Teireh Chadosha, the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, taken from Miyad Mamish, posting from my own Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.